Welcome to the Silent Strategist.
Welcome back to the Silent Strategist. If you are new here, welcome. This is the place where we do not talk about motivation. We do not talk about positivity. We talk about power, real power. The kind that operates in silence, moves without announcement, and wins without conflict. Today's video is going to be different. Today we are going to talk about something that most people will never understand, and the ones who do become impossible to defeat. Today's topic: outsmart your enemies mentally, the 7 ruthless psychological tricks of Machiavelli. If you have been on this channel before, you already know, we do not waste your time. So if you are ready, let's get into it. They are not trying to destroy you. That would be too obvious. What they want is something far more valuable and far more dangerous. They want access. Access to your emotions, your reactions, your timing, your inner balance. Machiavelli warned centuries ago, the greatest danger is not the enemy who attacks. It is the enemy who observes. Because when someone observes you long enough, they stop guessing. They start controlling. This video is not motivation, this video is armor. Before we continue, drop this in the comments. I am unreadable. Most people believe enemies act out of hatred. That belief blinds them. Enemies do not act out of hatred. They act out of calculation. They do not provoke to fight. They provoke to measure. They do not delay because they hesitate. They delay to see how quickly you panic. They do not go silent because they are weak. They go silent to watch how much noise you make when you are uncomfortable. In Machiavellian terms, every emotional response is a confession. It reveals your position, your insecurity, your need for control. And power is lost the moment you become predictable. Intelligent opponents never go for direct collision. Open conflict is expensive. It exposes intent, creates resistance, invites consequences. Machiavelli observed something critical. Smart rivals prefer to influence over impact. Their first objective is never to defeat you. It is to gain permission. Permission to disturb your inner balance. Permission to affect your mood. Permission to shape your decisions without you noticing. Provocation is the entry tool. A remark, a delay, a gesture, a silent withdrawal. Each one is calibrated to test whether it can disturb your internal order. The moment you respond emotionally, the door opens. From that point forward, they are no longer guessing, they are adjusting. Hierarchy is not established through dominance alone. It is established through control of emotional flow. The person who sets the emotional direction defines the structure of every interaction. When you become irritated, defensive, rush to correct misunderstandings, you are no longer choosing freely. You are responding inside someone else's design. Machiavelli wrote it plainly. Men are so simple that whoever deceives will always find someone willing to be deceived. Emotional needs create obedience. The desire to be respected, understood, or justified becomes leverage. When those needs are visible, they can be exploited without force. Reaction is never neutral. The instant you respond, you surrender initiative. Machiavelli understood that power belongs to the one who acts by choice, not by impulse. Reacting places you inside a structure you did not design. It forces you to move on terms that were decided before you even knew a game had begun. Every response carries information. Tone reveals priority. Speed reveals urgency. Words reveal intention. Silence after provocation reveals strength, but speech reveals shape. Most people believe reacting demonstrates confidence. In truth, it demonstrates exposure. Exposure creates access. Access creates control. Refusing to react destroys this entire mechanism. When no response arrives, the enemy is left without confirmation. Their assumptions remain untested. Their pressure floats without landing. This absence creates discomfort because control requires feedback. Without feedback, certainty erodes. The enemy begins second-guessing their timing, their meaning, their impact. Refusing reaction also reverses the psychological burden. Instead of you managing emotions, the enemy must manage uncertainty. Silence becomes a mirror. They project motives, they imagine strategies, they fill gaps with fear. This internal noise leads to overreach, and overreach creates mistakes. Drop this in the comments. My emotions are inaccessible. Silence is not emptiness, it is density without direction. Machiavelli understood that what is undefined becomes feared, and what is feared gains weight. Silence removes reference points. No verbal signal, no emotional cue, no visible intent. The opposing mind is forced inward. The pressure does not disappear, it multiplies. Speech resolves tension. Silence preserves it. Enemies depend on resolution because resolution restores their control. When you speak, you anchor interpretation. When you remain silent, interpretation spirals. The enemy begins assigning meaning where none was offered. That meaning is shaped by their own insecurity, not your intent. This is where imbalance forms. There is a hierarchy within communication. Those who speak often are responding. Those who speak last define reality. Those who remain silent entirely exist outside the frame. Silence lifts you above the exchange. You are no longer participating. You are being observed. Whoever is the cause of another becoming powerful ruins himself. Machiavelli. When you offer nothing, no advantage can be extracted. When you withhold explanation, no leverage is formed. Strategic silence is not withdrawal, it is positioning. Time is the most underestimated instrument of power. Machiavelli understood that whoever dictates tempo dictates behavior. Urgency is rarely natural. It is manufactured. Manufactured to compress judgment, weaken discernment, and force premature commitment. Enemies introduce haste to limit your choices. Rapid decisions feel decisive, but they often serve the initiator. Speed benefits the one who prepared earlier. The one who rushes is already behind. Delay is not indecision. It is disruption. When you slow the exchange, you fracture expectation. Enemies plan sequences based on predicted response windows. When those windows collapse, structure fails. They are forced to wait, and waiting transfers emotional weight. Anticipation breeds tension. Tension degrades clarity. Time asymmetry establishes hierarchy. The individual who is comfortable waiting signals independence. The individual who demands immediacy reveals need, and need creates vulnerability. Machiavelli recognized that authority appears calm because it does not fear losing advantage through delay. Controlling time also neutralizes manipulation. Manipulation requires synchronization. When timing is disrupted, influence weakens. Drop this in the comments. I control the pace. Enemies do not prepare for truth. They prepare for habit. Machiavelli understood that anticipation is built on patterns, not reality. The mind seeks shortcuts, and repetition creates those shortcuts. Once a pattern is assumed, planning becomes comfortable, and comfort dulls alertness. When an enemy believes they know how you will behave, they stop thinking critically. That is the opening. Expectation functions like a script. It tells them when you will respond, how you will react, what form resistance will take. That script becomes their safety net. They lean on it without realizing it. When behavior suddenly diverges from that script, confusion replaces confidence. Breaking expectation is not randomness. Randomness lacks intent. Strategic deviation is precise. It occurs at decisive moments, not constantly. When pressure peaks and a familiar response is expected, deviation carries maximum impact. A prince should not depart from good if possible, but must know how to enter into evil when necessity demands it. Machiavelli. This was not moral advice. It was strategic flexibility. One broken expectation infects the next encounter. Once doubt sets in, even correct assumptions feel uncertain. The human mind is not built to tolerate unfinished narratives. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. People seek resolution because resolution restores order. When order is withheld, tension lingers. That lingering tension consumes attention, drains energy, and distorts judgment. Denying closure is not cruelty. It is strategic withdrawal from psychological exchange. Enemies do not always seek victory. Often they seek explanation. They want acknowledgement, reaction, recognition. Any form of conclusion reassures them that influence still exists. When you remove access without explanation, the loop remains open. An open loop is not neutral. It pulls focus inward repeatedly. The enemy begins replaying events, searching for meaning that does not exist. Anger burns quickly. Confusion does not. Anger releases energy. Uncertainty traps it. Machiavelli understood that punishment can end conflict, but ambiguity prolongs dominance. Closure also restores hierarchy. When you explain, justify, or clarify, you acknowledge the other party's authority to judge. That acknowledgement elevates them. Denial of closure removes that elevation. It communicates without words. Your understanding is unnecessary. Drop this in the comments. I owe no one closure. The final stage of dominance is not confrontation. It is separation. Machiavelli understood that the highest form of control is achieved when influence fails entirely. Psychological untouchability is not isolation from the world. It is insulation from interference. When external forces can no longer shape your internal direction, power stabilizes. At this stage, identity becomes internally complete. Actions no longer require validation. Decisions no longer depend on approval. Behavior flows from structure, not stimulus. Enemies sense this shift immediately. Their usual methods lose traction. Provocation falls flat. Delay has no effect. Escalation produces no movement. Without response, influence dies. Untouchability also reshapes self-perception. Confidence no longer needs reinforcement. Strength no longer seeks display. Calm replaces tension. This internal alignment is visible externally. Others sense it without explanation. Respect follows naturally. Machiavelli warned, those who depend on external approval remain permanently vulnerable. Dependency creates access. Access invites control. Untouchability severs that chain. Once severed, it cannot be repaired without your consent, and that consent is never given. Power is rarely in what you take. It is in what cannot be taken from you. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Most people chase influence as if it were a trophy. They argue, they explain, they justify. They exhaust themselves pursuing control that was never theirs to hold. True mastery is the opposite. It is inaccessibility, a position so stable that attempts to disturb it fail before they begin. The enemy orbits you. You do not orbit them. Influence is not seized, it is denied. Victory is not measured in the collapse of others, but in your immunity to collapse. When your mind is untouchable, provocation becomes irrelevant. Anger, fear, desire cannot move you because you are anchored internally. Your identity, your choices, your responses, they belong solely to you. This is not domination. This is liberation. If this video was valuable to you, like, share, and subscribe, and drop in the comments, I am untouchable. Every time you reinforce this mindset, you strengthen the armor of your mind. Power is not in what you destroy, it is in what cannot touch you. When influence ends, conflict ends. When conflict ends, freedom begins. Be untouchable, be strategic, be invisible. And remember, the highest victory is not defeating your enemies. It is becoming impossible for them to reach. And that is all for today on The Silent Strategist. If this video gave you something, a new perspective, a sharper mindset, a stronger armor, then do one thing right now. Hit subscribe. Because every single week we go deeper. Deeper into the psychology of power. Deeper into the strategies that the most dangerous minds in history used to stay untouchable. You will not find this anywhere else. This is the Silent Strategist, and we will see you in the next one.